Reg Park wasn't just another big name in bodybuilding. He was a true game changer at a time when the sport was still figuring out what it was supposed to be. When people talk about classic bodybuilding, Reg's name comes up as a gold standard, a benchmark that's lasted for generations. But what exactly made him such a long-lasting legend? Unlike many athletes of his era, Reg pulled off something rare. He combined real-world strength, an impressive look, and undeniable presence. He wasn't just big on stage, he was genuinely strong off it. His physique projected power, but also balance, symmetry, and a certain elegance. Because of that, his body wasn't just admired, it was respected. And Reg Park didn't stop at being an athlete. He became an actor, an entrepreneur, and a true educator of the human physique. By taking his image to the big screen, he helped spread bodybuilding around the world, showing the public a new ideal of strength and appearance. This wasn't just a good-looking body, it was a body that worked. Now that you already get a sense of how unreal today's athlete really was, hit that like button and come along with us. Reg Park was born on June 7, 1928, in Leeds, England, during a time marked by economic hardship and the lasting effects of the post-war period. Nothing, absolutely nothing, suggested that this young English kid would one day become one of the greatest symbols in bodybuilding history. As a teenager, Reg Park had one clear passion: soccer. He spent countless hours training and even played in the youth ranks of Leeds United, showing discipline, competitiveness, and a strong athletic mindset. And here's an important detail. Reg Park had no initial interest in bodybuilding at all. He didn't dream of stepping on stage, hitting poses, or building an aesthetic physique. His goal was simple and straight to the point: to play soccer at a high level. That's what makes his story even more compelling, because it shows how his path changed due to completely unexpected circumstances. At a very young age, a serious knee injury brought his soccer career to an abrupt end. For any teenager, that would have been devastating. Years of dedication suddenly cut short. But that painful moment ended up opening the door to a transformation that would change his life and the sport itself. During rehab, Reg was introduced to weight training for the first time and met David Cohen, a local bodybuilder. What started as curiosity quickly turned into fascination. Right there, among basic barbells and dumbbells, not only was a new athlete being born, a legend was taking shape. The real turning point in Reg Park's life came when he attended the very first NABBA Mr. Universe contest. On that stage, he watched John Grimek defeat Steve Reeves in what many considered a controversial decision. More than the outcome, it was the visual impact of those physiques that changed everything. In that moment, Reg realized he wanted to build something just like that. From then on, training stopped being just rehab and turned into an obsession. With no modern gyms, no advanced equipment, and zero comfort, Reg trained the only way he could. The location? His father's backyard, battling freezing cold, constant rain, and even snow. None of it was ever an excuse to quit. Wearing heavy military-style clothing, multiple layers to stay warm, and thick boots, he lifted rough, homemade weights as if he were in a daily battle against his own body. There was no music, no mirrors, no outside motivation. Just repetition, effort, and a stubborn determination to get better every single day, even when conditions were brutally against him. Over time, Reg took things even further and built an improvised garage gym. The space had no electricity, no mirrors, and barely any protection from the weather. Still, that simple setup became the laboratory where he started shaping the physique that would later be considered legendary. That period was crucial not only in building Reg Park's body, but also in forging his mindset. After a stretch of almost obsessive training, the results showed up shockingly fast. In just 1 year of serious training, Reg Park stepped on stage and stunned the British bodybuilding scene. In 1949, he won the Mr. Britain title, taking first place in a massive debut that immediately put his name on the map. That one wasn't just about a trophy. It was proof that all those brutal training conditions had been worth it. Reg stopped being seen as just a promising young guy and started to be recognized as an athlete with real international potential. And the obvious question followed: how far could he actually go if he kept this pace? Not long after, his parents backed a life-changing move, a 6-month trip to the United States. At that time, the heart of the bodybuilding world was across the Atlantic. For Reg, This wasn't just travel. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to test his physique against the very best and see what the true elite of the sport really looked like. It was in the US that Reg met Joe Weider, the most influential figure in bodybuilding at the time. Impressed by the Englishman's physique and stage presence, Weider began featuring him in his magazines. That exposure was crucial in turning Reg Park into a globally recognized name. In 1950, another major milestone followed, the NABBA Mr. Universe. Reg finished as the runner-up, losing only to Steve Reeves. Even without the win, the message was loud and clear. A new giant had arrived, and he was just getting started. Then came 1951, a year that would go down in bodybuilding history. When Reg Park stepped onto the NABBA Mr. Universe stage, he did something very few believed was possible at the time. He won the competition and broke the absolute dominance of American athletes. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a symbolic turning point for the sport. That one put England firmly on the international bodybuilding map. Reg was no longer viewed as a foreign prospect, but as the man who proved the United States wasn't unbeatable on stage. From that moment on, his name was spoken with respect, and in some circles, even with a bit of fear. What makes it even more impressive is that this victory wasn't a one-off. Years later, Reg returned even more dominant, winning the Mr. Universe Pro again in 1958 and repeating the feat in 1965. Taking the same title across different decades showed something rare: long-term competitiveness combined with constant evolution. Physically, Reg Park was an absolute colossus for his era. Standing 6 feet 1 inch, 1.85 meters, he blended size and proportion in a way that was almost unheard of at the time. On stage, his weight typically ranged from about 214 to 222 pounds, 97 to 101 kilograms, massive numbers for the classic era. In the off-season, he reportedly reached up to 250 pounds, around 113 kilograms, which was nearly unimaginable back then. His arms, measuring roughly 19 to 20 inches, 48 to 51 centimeters, became one of his signature features. But more than the measurements, what truly set Reg apart was the visual impact, a physique that radiated real strength, presence, and authority. Before we go any deeper into his career, we need to talk about who Reg Park truly was. It was impossible to separate his image from the idea of real strength. At a time when many physiques impressed mainly through looks, Reg made a point of proving that his body actually worked. He didn't just want to look strong on stage, he wanted to be genuinely strong off it. Reg was one of the very first truly massive bodybuilders, long before extreme size became the norm decades later. His physique wasn't built on visual tricks or exaggerated posing, but on dense, thick, functional muscle. Every part of his body gave off a sense of raw power. That reputation didn't come out of nowhere. Reg Park made history as the second man in the world to bench press 500 pounds, roughly 227 kilos. By the standards of that era, that was almost unbelievable. Very few athletes, even outside bodybuilding, were anywhere near that level of strength. And Reg didn't keep that strength hidden inside the gym. He loved demonstrating it publicly, taking part in exhibitions, challenges, and strongman-style performances. He reinforced the idea that bodybuilders could go toe-to-toe with weightlifters and power athletes when it came to raw strength. And that helped change how the entire sport was perceived. That prestige made Reg Park a respected figure not just among fans, but among fellow athletes as well. He represented an ideal that feels almost lost today: the complete bodybuilder, strong, functional, and truly dominant. Reg Park was one of the first bodybuilders to break past the stage and conquer the movie screen. In the 1960s, when bodybuilding was still a niche, he brought a whole new kind of hero to the public: genuinely strong, visually striking, and impossible to ignore. This wasn't just acting, it was a cultural impact. He starred in Italian epic films, the famous Sword and Sandal movies, playing characters like Hercules, Maciste, and Ursus. These roles demanded more than just looks. They required posture, presence, and physical credibility. Reg delivered all of that naturally, because his body communicated strength even before he said a single word. Reg's presence in cinema had a direct effect on the sport itself. Millions of people who had never even heard of bodybuilding began to associate that powerful physique with discipline, hard training, and excellence. But one of the most important chapters of his career was his influence on Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this went far beyond simple admiration. For Arnold, Reg was the first true role model, the man who proved it was possible to build a massive physique without sacrificing real strength, discipline, or character. That connection started early, when a young Arnold was searching for real-world examples to turn his dreams into something tangible. Watching Reg play Hercules on the big screen was the moment everything clicked for Arnold. That image wasn't just a mythological character, it was a reachable ideal. A strong, dominant, functional body built by a real person. From that moment on, Arnold knew he wanted to follow that exact path. Over time, admiration turned into personal connection. Reg didn't just inspire Arnold from afar. He became his mentor, guiding his first steps in bodybuilding. It was under Reg's guidance that Arnold learned a crucial lesson. Great physiques aren't built on shortcuts, but on strength, compound movements, and steady progression. Lessons Arnold would carry throughout his entire career. The two even competed during the same era, something incredibly rare between mentor and student. Still, there was always mutual respect. Reg saw in Arnold the future of the sport, while Arnold saw in Reg the embodiment of the classic era. That exchange between generations only strengthened both of their legacies. Years later, after becoming the most iconic name in bodybuilding history, Arnold never stopped acknowledging that influence. He consistently said that his training philosophy, competitive mindset, and even his vision of success all began with Reg Park. One thing we absolutely can't overlook when talking about Reg Park's legacy is the 5x5 method. Without exaggeration, it stands as one of his greatest contributions to bodybuilding and strength training. Unlike overly complex routines packed with endless variations, this system had one clear goal: build real strength and, as a direct result, create long-lasting, proportional muscle. Simple in structure, powerful in results. The workout layout was straightforward and impossible to overcomplicate. Each exercise was performed for 5 sets of 5 reps. The first 2 sets served as warm-ups, while the final 3 were heavy working sets. This approach prepared the body, protected the joints, and still allowed maximum intensity where it mattered most. Another key element was training frequency. The 5x5 program was done only 3 times per week, which might sound like very little to some. But Reg understood something few people truly grasped. Growth doesn't happen during training. It happens during recovery. Training less, but with more focus and heavier loads, was the real secret. Long rest periods were also part of the strategy, often reaching up to 3 minutes between sets. This ensured proper nervous system recovery and made it possible to handle progressively heavier weights. Reg wasn't interested in chasing the burn, but in consistently and safely adding more weight to the bar. At the core of the method was slow, steady progression. No reckless jumps, no ego lifting. When a weight started to feel manageable across the working sets, it was time to increase it gradually. This approach became the physical foundation for countless athletes of the classic era. Reg Park's 5x5 routine perfectly shows how simplicity, when paired with logic and consistency, can be incredibly effective. On Monday, the focus was on the fundamentals: bench press, barbell rows, squats, and back extensions. This combo worked almost the entire body, emphasizing pushing, pulling, and building a rock-solid base. The workout started heavy and finished by strengthening the lower back, preparing it to handle even bigger loads down the road. Wednesday brought a strategic shift, but the core principles stayed the same: dips, pull-ups, deadlifts, and once again, back extensions. Here, Reg reinforced the idea of functional strength, using bodyweight movements alongside lifts that demanded full body control and an extremely strong posterior chain. Friday wrapped up the week with military presses, one-arm rows, squats, and, yet again, back extensions. Squatting twice a week was no coincidence. To Reg Park, legs and lower back were the foundation of everything. Without a strong base, there was no such thing as a big, powerful physique. The final detail shows just how well thought out this routine really was. Abs and calves were trained on alternate days, outside the main workouts. That avoided unnecessary fatigue and kept total focus on the big lifts. Simple, straightforward, and effective. More than muscles and titles, Reg Park became known for something increasingly rare in the sport: character. At a time when bodybuilding was changing fast, Reg held firm to his principles. He never used anabolic steroids, even when their use became common among top-level athletes. That choice came at a cost. Reg often competed against younger, chemically enhanced athletes in an obviously uneven playing field. Still, he kept stepping on stage, risking his reputation but staying true to himself. To him, winning meant nothing if it required giving up his values. Outside the stage, his character stood out even more. Living in South Africa during apartheid, Reg was an active advocate for racial equality. He allowed black athletes to train at his gym at a time when that was still considered unacceptable by many. In an extremely tense social climate, that stance took real courage. Reg didn't stop at words. He brought South Africa's first black bodybuilder to compete on the Mr. Universe stage long before the official end of apartheid. In a conservative, segregated environment, that act carried massive historical weight, proving that the sport could be about merit, not discrimination. Reg Park judged people by ability, dedication, and character, never by appearance, skin color, or background. That may be one of his most important legacies. Physiques impress, but real values last across generations. In the final years of his life, Reg Park chose South Africa as his home. Far from the big stages and the spotlight, he kept doing exactly what he always believed in: training, teaching, and inspiring. Even after decades in the sport, Reg never walked away from the iron. For him, training wasn't a phase, it was a lifestyle. What's truly impressive is that Reg continued training clients well into his 70s. Not as a symbolic figure, but as someone active, present, and deeply respected inside the gym. His hands-on experience, built over decades, turned every piece of advice into a real lesson in discipline, strength, and longevity. In 1999, he received a historic honor. Reg Park was inducted into the IFBB Hall of Fame. That recognition officially confirmed what the bodybuilding world had known for a long time. His importance went far beyond trophies. He shaped mindsets, methods, and entire generations of athletes. Sadly, on November 22, 2007, Reg Park passed away at the age of 79 due to skin cancer. His death marked the end of an era, but not the end of his influence. The impact of his journey was already deeply rooted in the sport, impossible to erase with time. His legacy lives on through his children. John Park, a former Olympic swimmer, became a coach and is now the owner of Legacy Gym in Los Angeles, carrying forward his father's philosophy. Jeunesse Park, on the other hand, founded a sports-focused nonprofit organization, expanding the park name's social impact even further. In the end, Reg Park isn't just a great champion from the past. He is the ultimate symbol of the classic era of bodybuilding, a time when the body was built with patience, discipline, and purpose. A time when every extra pound on the bar mattered, and every muscle told a story of real effort. Reg proved through his own life that strength, aesthetics, and character can coexist. He showed that you don't have to choose between looking strong and being strong, or between winning and staying true to your principles. His legacy goes far beyond titles and body measurements. He left behind a mindset that still makes sense today in any era. On and off the stage, Reg Park shaped generations. He inspired athletes, coaches, fans, and even people who never competed but found in training a path to discipline and personal transformation. His impact wasn't limited to gyms or contests. He helped define what it truly means to be a complete bodybuilder. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Reg Park wasn't just a strong man. He was an archetype, a living example of how to embrace the sport with passion, ethics, and purpose. A name that doesn't age, because his ideas are still relevant. Now I want to hear from you. What impressed you the most about Reg Park's journey? The insane strength, the training philosophy, or his character off the stage? Drop your comment below. I read every single one. If this video brought you value, hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot and allows us to keep sharing stories like this. Subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. And if you want to support the project even more, become a channel member and get access to exclusive content. And don't leave just yet. There's another video on the end screen that connects directly with this story. Click it and keep going on this journey through the golden era of bodybuilding. The story doesn't end here.